everybody, this is Caidicus, and today I'm going to give you a video review of the Dreadbox Medusa by Dreadbox and Polyend. I think that the main unit is done by Polyend, and then Dreadbox had put in like their own analog synthesizer into this thing. It's a combination of a 3 analog voice, 3 digital voice sequencer hardware synthesizer monstrosity, and it's actually a really cool device. I really like the sequencing ability of it, especially since the 2.0 update, which gave a lot more functionality and addressed some of the issues that were prevalent when it was first released. So I'll start with a review of the outside of the machine, and then we'll listen to some samples and see how the sequencer works and stuff like that. So without further ado, let's get into the actual synthesizer itself, and I'll see you guys in a second. Okay, so here we are on the outside of the device. We'll start on the left and work our way right. Over here you have your 64 pad sequencer, and it actually allows notes and stuff like that. And one thing I will say that I didn't realize before I bought it, in all the other reviews that I saw, I kind of felt like the pads would stick up more, and I also felt like they would be bigger than they actually are. In video, for some reason, the pads always look a little bit bigger than they actually are. They're actually smaller than they look, and they're actually a lot more recessed. They're not under, like if you can see here, they're not under the actual unit itself. They stick up a little bit, but not as much as I thought by seeing in the videos. So when I actually went to buy it in Hong Kong, I wondered if it was like, real, or if it was like a knockoff brand. But anyway, let's move on from that. Over here, you've got your little display screen on here, and it'll actually change according to whatever like configuration menu and stuff like that. And you can see another menu here that is actually kind of little secret menu. You've got your grid button right here, which controls different things about the grid. See? Whoa, it shows you all the things. They light up and very pretty. You've got a random button for randomizing different parameters on the grid itself. This is your main knob for changing values and stuff like that. Also for moving, like if I go to record on here and I turn this, it'll choose the spot that I'm recording to. You've got a play button down here, which will play the sequence up here. You've got a record here that will also record each sequence. So for example, if I like press these notes right here, like there's 1, 2, 3, and 4, it'll record it into that one spot there. Or if I do 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, it'll 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can record chords into here and arpeggios and whatever you want. Over here we've got 3 oscillator selectors right here, and if you press this button down here, digital, and then unhighlighted is analog. So here I've got digital selected, and that means I'll be adjusting parameters for the digital oscillators 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and 3, which are like their levels are right here. And if I deselect it, then it'll give me the analogs. You'll notice that on the digital here, all 4 of the wave shapes have lit up, as opposed to the analog, it just lights up one of them. That's because the analog oscillators are limited to these 4 shapes, whereas for the digital oscillators, you've got those 4 shapes plus the wavetable shapes, which when you've got 4 selected like here, you'll have to go into some options and you can choose whatever wave shape you want. And the wave shape will be shown on this little OLED over here. So it's kind of neat. It all begins to make sense as you're using it. Down here you've got your FM synthesis amount. So right there, FM, frequency modulation. You've got oscillator 1 and 2, so they can modulate each other. And then the filter can also be modulated by FM, frequency modulation. Down here you've got your pulse width knob, you've got your noise knob, and you've got your wavetable, which comes into play when you're using the digital oscillators, and you can select through the different wavetables. Here you've got your sync 2 and sync 3, so it might lock all the notes of those. Instead of having a detuning, it'll sync them together. And then your fine tune button down here for doing fine tuning. Here you've got play mode. Glide speaks for itself, so if I pressed a note down here and then a note up here, boom, instead of you've got M, P1 and P2. M is mono, so that means that you can only press one note at the same time. P1 means paraphonic, so if I press two notes, it'll actually play the two notes together. And then P2 is basically like a pseudo 6 polyphonic, where you can have 6 different notes pressed at the same time, but they all share a single filter, so it's not filter per voice, it is all a single filter. So if I were to press these three right here, and then I press these three right here, it would completely knock the previous notes or previous keys out of the filter and start playing these ones over here. So it's not actually polyphonic, it's just paraphonic, and they, like I said, they all share the same filter, and it does make for some kind of wonky behavior when you're trying to play chords, and it'll kind of like, for example, you press 4 notes on one chord and 4 notes on another, and a couple of the ones from the first chord will keep playing while the 4 voices knock out the like most of the voices from the previous note. It's hard to explain, but I'll show you in a minute when I do the audio part of the review. Moving down here, you've got your filter, cutoff, and resonance. You've got your filter type, L2, L4, and high pass, low 2, low 4, and high pass. Here you've got your track, and I don't actually know what that does other than change track there, but I don't know. Yeah. You've got your envelope right here, and your envelope for 1, 2, or 3, as well as your envelope for your filter, your amp, and your loop. So you see on this screen right here, when I click on filter and it blinks, it shows you what the filter looks like. And then if I move this stuff, it actually starts doing that, and the filter thing blinks. Here I go to 1, and this is the envelope 1, and it'll start doing this, and it shows me again by blinking what it's doing. So it's actually kind of convenient how it always shows you what it's doing. Double tap it to turn it on, and then I can have basically up to 3 different envelopes, and then go down to here for the filter envelope, the amp envelope, and your looping, how it'll loop notes and stuff like that. Moving down here, we've got our mixer with our analogs, so I can turn up and down the like analog 1, analog 2, analog 3, mixer, and then all my 3 digital. And all of these are represented on this little OLED over here, so I can turn all those up and you can see their levels. It's also showing me the waveform when I adjust the digital. Is that showing me the noise? Yeah. It shows me the waveform after to show me, yeah, which waveform is activated. Going over here on the bottom, you've got your headphones volume and your master volume. You've got 5 different LFOs, which can be turned on again by double tapping on and off. You've got your LFO rate, your wave, your amount, and your target. So what the LFO is going to modify. So 1 is off, I double tap it so it's on, and then I turn this and it will choose what I'm doing from oscillator frequency, oscillator 1, 2, 3. There are many different things that can be modified via all of the LFOs on here. And then you've got your sync button to make sure that your LFOs aren't working out of time with each other. And that about ties it up for the front of the device. Let's go around to the back. You can see on the side there's a little bit of venting here in order to make sure that the machine doesn't get too hot. On the back, it's actually very simple. You've got your MIDI in, out, and through. You've got a reset button right here that you've got to stick something very pointy in there to actually press it. But that's not like a reset the machine. It's more so like, you know, resetting, like a full-on reset if you hold it down. You've got your USB input right here. You've got a large headphones jack, a large input jack, a large output jack. I don't know if it's a stereo or just mono output. And you've got your power plug and your on and off button, and then a little bit more venting, and that is really it. That's all. As for the look and feel of the machine, it's a lot thinner than I thought it would be. Like, it's not as tall as I thought it would be. It's very thin and very long. It's extremely well built. It's all metal except for the pads, but even the knobs are metal. It feels quite good to use, and the tactility of it feels nice. As I mentioned, the pads barely stick up, They're kind of nice because they do have not just pressure sensitivity, but they have sensitivity for XY. So if you press it here versus over here, you can set that up so that you can like make it so that it modulates just kind of like a modulation wheel or a mod wheel. You could have it, you can have it do that if you want to for up, down, and left, right, left and right, as well as velocity sensitive. And you can record that kind of input per step on here when you're doing it. You could do like you can press all these and record each step to have full-on modulation per step recorded into the sequencer. So it's very cool like that. Anyway, that's it for the outside of the device. It's very simple, as you can see, and we're going to come back in a minute and hear what this thing sounds like. So give me a sec, and I'll see you guys in a moment. Okay, welcome back to part 3 of the video review. Here we're going to jump into the sound a little bit, as well as hear some presets and see whatever patches they've put into the machine. I've recently updated to 2.0 and I haven't had a chance to check out the patches myself yet, so this will be us exploring it together. The first thing you just heard right there was the first patch that I made last night, and as well as the sequence, just to test it out. And I found it was actually a lot of fun to go through turning on different, like turning on each oscillator, and as well as adjusting the filter and seeing how everything sounded. So as you can hear, it sounds pretty cool. When I was making the patch, it actually sounded a lot different, like between making it and actually playing back the patch. So it was really cool. It was unexpected and cool. The patch sounded the same. It was the sequence that sounded quite different, because notes sound a lot different when you They sound a lot different when you play them like that as opposed to when you make an entire sequence playing them. But anyway, let's listen to one of the first things that's on here. Let's listen to preset A2. First of all, let's hear what it sounds like. Depending on the pressure that I play it, it sounds quite different. There's kind of a resonance to it. Let's hear what the sequence sounds like. Interesting. For this patch, they have it selected to P2, which is paraphonic, so it won't allow two notes or more than two notes to be played at the same time. Let's try the next one. Interesting. Very bassy. If you're wearing headphones, you probably heard all of it, and if you're not, then you probably were like, hey, this is mostly empty. Next one. Interesting. You can hear as I turn the noise up, and then change the color of the noise. This knob right here for noise actually changes the color, although there's no indication of what color it is, but you can hear it change. It goes from like a lower noise to a higher pitch noise, and it almost gives it a kind of a percussive element to the pattern. One more quick play there. Cool. Let's try the next one. A5. This one's a shorter pattern, as you can see here. So you can actually choose the sequence length. I think it's in here, yeah. Sequence mode, scale, layout. Maybe not that one. Maybe in config. No. Where is it? Where are you? There we go. Sequence length right here. I'll click on that and it shows 32, and I can use this knob right here to increase the length or shorten it depending on what I want for my sequence. So let's say it's right here, and then I go back. It will now play all of them, although most of them should be empty. It's still playing that one. I guess I have to yeah, I have to confirm it. And a whole bunch of empty. So, playing the notes here. Sorry, I have to kind of hammer on it in order to get the notes to like sound enough for me to hear it. So if the camera shakes, that's why that's happening. Let's exit out of here and let's record onto here. And I'm just going to do something random here. So hit the record button. This is so simple. Record button, and then... Okay, so I've chosen... found the notes that I want. So I go back here to the first one just by like scrolling this back here. And then I can play it. And then the other ones that are already in there. So I can, that's how simple it is to record a sequence into here. And because it's on P2 here, that means I have up to 6 voices that work as different notes. But for each note, it's using one oscillator. So when I start using, like playing another note, it'll keep playing some of the oscillators that haven't been reused in the next chord, but it will take away the notes that are using the oscillators that it's going to use in the new note, in the new chord. I hope that makes sense. I'm not doing a very good job of explaining it, but yeah. Let's go back up here and just... So you heard how that sounded when I was just pressing the things, but listen to what happens when I play it. It's a little bit different, just a little bit. I can turn up and down the oscillators here. So if I turn off all the oscillators except for one, and then I try to play paraphonically, even though this is lit up paraphonically, it's still limited to the one note because it only has one oscillator to work with. If I turn up 2, I can use... I can do 2 notes at the same time and I can play them. And then I can turn up another. And another. Yeah, just like that. Anyway, let's load another patch here. Let's hear the sequence. And then I can actually modify it any bit that I want. So I'm going to play it a little bit and I'm going to change the wave shapes and see what happens here. Let's see. Okay, for this patch, it looks like all 6 voices are on, or all 6 oscillators. So I'm going to play it, and then I'm going to start changing the wave shape and see how it affects it, okay? So you can hear as I'm changing the wave shapes for each individual oscillator, it's actually greatly changing the sound of the patch, of course. Let's load another one here. This one is A7. There's very unique names here, A7, A8. There are two banks. There's A and B. Each bank is basically A1 is just the first pad and A64 is the last pad. So in total there are 128 different samples, or not samples, patches that you can put in there, and 128 different sequences. One thing is each sequence is tied to that patch. So that means that you're not going to be able to use patch 64 with sequence 1. It doesn't work like that. As far as I know. Maybe it does, but I don't know. Anyway, let's try. Let's hear A7. Interesting. A8. And of course I can adjust the tempo at any time that I want. Okay, now in this part here, I'm going to use the same patch, and I'm going to see if I can do anything with the LFOs and give you, I don't know, a demo of the LFOs in action. And because there are so many different targets, it might sound terrible while I'm doing it, but whatever. The point is you can see the functionality. So here we go. Okay, so you could hear the LFOs in action there. It's not a very complex machine. I mean, like the capabilities that you have with it are very large, it's very versatile. There's a lot of things that you can do with it because you have such good or such like a high amount of control over all of the oscillators and the LFO and stuff like that. But it's not overly complicated. The layout and the way that everything works, I'm quite the amateur when it comes to all things musical, still learning my terms of like pulse width, modulation, and all that stuff. I'm still learning this stuff, and yet I find it very easy to wrap my head around the device. Everything makes a lot of sense. I haven't been until recently very comfortable using like LFOs and stuff like that, usually turning something that's a decent sounding patch into an absolute nightmare. But I find that the way that it's like targets and all that stuff and wave shape and stuff, the way that it's laid out on here has actually made it easier for me to understand LFOs on other devices and take what I've learned with this one onto over to those ones. So I do like the layout of the machine, and I like how easy and approachable it is. It's very accessible. So let's finish out the review just by, well, maybe I should just play a little bit of stuff here, show you the oscillators playing and stuff, because we haven't really heard much of that. So here you can see I've only got analog oscillator 1 turned up. So I can adjust a few things on here. Let me just exit out of here. I can adjust a few things. I can adjust the wave shape, the octave up or down, like from like basically 3 levels of octave and wave shape, and then I can tune it or detune it. That's not actually working. That's interesting. Okay, so let's go back to mono here. Gonna turn off my LFOs. Okay, let's go to the first patch that I made here. Kind of interesting things happening because I don't have very many oscillators turned up. If I turn them up, I should have more flexibility here. Kind of cool, very like 1980s RPG sound right there, and melody. Another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the my Eventide H9 effects pedal. I'm going to show you this with some reverb because I find reverb brings a lot of different synthesizers to life. So we just heard this. Let's hear it with some reverb. Turn the mix down a little bit. Let's try that again. Without it. Still very cool, but it, this synthesizer really comes to life with some effects on it. If I play like a single key here. Do you hear what it's doing right there? It sounds like different notes being played or like different octaves. And the reason for that is because right now in the configuration, what I've got going on is, maybe not the configuration, in this screen right here, there is a voice priority, okay? So it's got next and first. There are 2 selections for it. If you have it on next, what it's going to do is every time you press a single note, it's actually going to use a different oscillator to do it. Because I'm not in mono, I'm in paraphonic. So if I go to first here, it's always going to use the first available oscillator. It's not changing the oscillator. But if I go to next, and that actually carries through onto the sequencer there. If I were to record an entire 64-step sequence, let's just go to... Okay, and if I play it back, it should do the same thing. Should. Don't quote me on it. Sure enough. So it's actually going through all of the available oscillators each time. Now if I select mono, it should also not do that. Let's find out. Okay, that was rather massive. So now it's using all available oscillators, so and in total 6 oscillators, and you're hearing high and low because it's actually playing each oscillator not in the note that you pressed on the grid, or not in the octave that you pressed on the grid, but in the octave that it's set in the oscillator menu right here. So if I have one that's +1 octave and one that's -1 octave, they're going to be in total 2 octaves away from each other, and it's going to play those. So you can get a lot of very colorful and thick sounds out of it. Okay, so I think that pretty much wraps up everything for the introduction of the device. So in order to end it, I'm just going to play a couple more patches on here, and then I will end the video on that note. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, then leave a like and a comment down below. And if you haven't already, then please subscribe, and I'll try to bring new music-related videos and sometimes other videos, but mostly music stuff. Anyway, that's it. Thanks very much for watching. This is Caidicus, out.